Hello, I'm Robert, fact checker and science blogger, and helping people who are scared of various things for our Doomsday Debunked group on Facebook. So it seems that North Korea is going to skip the New Year's Day address this year. It's the news we're getting. And this will be his first time for a long time. And he said that he's going to halt it, that he no longer feels bound by his voluntary decision to, from his side, to stop the nuclear testing and the missile testing. Now, this doesn't mean that he's going to start right away. We'll have to see what happens. And but what this does not mean is it is not about wanting to start a war. This has never ever been their aim. What North Korea want is they want sanction relief and they want some security guarantee from the United States. They look around the world and they see that the US invaded Libya and it invaded Iraq, and then their older people have painful memories of the Korean War, during which the United States bombarded and basically firebombed large civilian areas of North Korea, something that wouldn't happen nowadays. And they basically they are very, very cautious about the United States and want to be absolutely sure that whatever they do, the United States is not going to invade North Korea and overthrow their government. And so that is basically what they want. Now, they do not want to. There's no future at all in North Korea in attacking anyone. They can't win anything. This could only make things worse for their country. But what they can do is to make themselves seem very strong, and they can launch more missiles. They can do more nuclear tests. And this is just to say to the rest of the world, we are strong, do not invade us. But there's another factor to it as well. By removing this voluntary decision that he made it unilaterally from his side, not in response to any agreement or anything. He just said, as a kind of goodwill gesture, we are going to stop all missile tests and all nuclear tests. And he did that long before the first summit. He did that with his New Year's address, way back in the beginning of 2018. And from then, he has not done any of that. And then we had the summits. So he is now saying, I no longer feel bound by that. So what he is not saying he's going to start these tests right away, but he may well feel that this gives him a counter on his side. That he can now say, look, you've got these extremely severe sanctions against North Korea. And actually, I think there's some human rights issues to these sanctions myself. Whatever you think about the North Korea leadership, and obviously there's lots of things that are wrong with their human rights records and everything. But the ordinary people in North Korea, 25 million, 28 million, or however many they are, then they suffer a huge amount from the sanctions. They just don't have any sources of energy. They have to resort to burning down their forests, even though they don't want to, because they don't have any sources of fuel because of the import restrictions. And burning coal, they want to transition to renewables. Actually, North Korea's president, Kim Jong Un, he realized back in 2011 that climate change was having a bad effect on his country, and he has signed up for the Paris Agreement, and he wants to transition to renewables. They are doing, in the middle of it, halfway through a 10-year reforestation campaign at the moment, but it's difficult to do. They plant lots of trees. They grow millions of trees every year, and they plant them. But at the same time, even though I think they have a death penalty for people who burn down forests, but even so, then people are doing it because they don't have the source of the because they just don't have the fuel. And they are really in a quite a difficult situation. And I think the United States could do some relief of sanctions while still having the spirit of that they are holding the leadership to account, freezing assets and doing things that target particularly the leaders of North Korea and don't affect the ordinary people so much, who are extremely poor, amongst the least developed countries in the world, not the least of all, and actually they do look after their people better than than many of the least developed countries with similar GDP levels. And they have things like many of the population, they suffer from intestinal worms because they do things like they put untreated sewage on their fields, which is a way that worms cycle around and back to the people who then eat the food. And there are many issues there. They have come through severe famine conditions, and if you read their New Year addresses, there are many things every year where they talk about the severe conditions that they have managed to overcome, and through their various initiatives, and they've had multiple initiatives that the population know about. So I would say, and Russia and China are calling for relief for sanctions. They don't want to see, perhaps the US would even want the government to topple because of the sanctions. I don't see that happening. The actual population of North Korea, actually, although there are defectors and the people there who do not like what is going on, of course, as there always is, and a significant proportion, but a large proportion are behind North Korea because they see things very much the way that the leaders do, and they look at the world and they say, of course, they're coloured by the propaganda, they don't know much about the rest of the world, but their population is pretty much behind them. They couldn't lead a country like that without having quite a lot of support for their policies, harsh though they are. And the North Koreans, apparently they're quite a jolly people and a very happy kind of people, which you would never guess from people who say they've visited North Korea, by temperament and by spirit, even if with these harsh conditions. So, Russia and China want the sanctions relief because they do not want to have 28 million North Koreans, a large proportion of the population, as refugees in their countries. They're not communist, actually. They have a rather different ideology, and they would be a bit out of place in these countries, which in any case is a large number of people to suddenly support if the government was to collapse, which is not very likely, I think. But the sanction relief is very severe. They're feeling it strongly, and the United States, I think they should take the step of offering sanction relief at this stage and not step up on the sanctions. And so thinking about the ordinary people in North Korea and the vast potential there is, and that this can be a start of a step towards denuclearization, I think there's a lot of indications that the North Koreans are actually sincere. After the first summit with Trump, then North Korea used the honorific, and they showed video of a current president, the first time probably that any of the North Koreans had seen a current living president in photograph, and they used the honorific, which is quite a striking thing to do in Confucian society. And so I think, I really do think myself, I would be behind those who are saying, and lots of people who are now saying, that the US should, on their side, offer some sanction relief at this stage. Carefully chosen, selective sanction relief to start the process going. Anyway, we will see what's happening. The very worst case is not war. There's no way that North Korea is going to attack anyone in their situation. They are very vulnerable. They have these weapons because they feel so vulnerable. And They're rather authoritarian, they're a Confucian society, they have this idea of trying to create a perfect harmony on earth, rather than any kind of heaven. They think of this as being where heaven is. And they have this idea of a very stratified society with Kim Jong Un at the top. And this is a prevalent belief in North Korea. It is also a prevalent belief in South Korea. It has its bad sides, it has its good sides. But we need to understand what we're working with, and that is partly why Trump has actually managed to kind of make some progress, because he went straight to the top with Kim Jong Un, and with the Confucian society he could hardly have done better, and they do need to return to summit talks. What the negotiators have said over and over is that it's all very well talking to the underlings, but really you have to sort it out right to the head. Kim Jong Un is the only one who really makes decisions. He is really the leader of the society, and the others pretty much rubber stamp what he says. And if the underlings talk to Trump's underlings and they make some decisions, but it's not an agreement yet until the Trump and Kim Jong-un meet together and talk one-to-one. That is the key, basically, that Trump accidentally, or for whatever reason, he seemed to hit the right key note there. And I think he has a good chance still. Now, as to what Kim Jong-un might actually do, then if he doesn't get this sanctions relief or some kind of very soon kind of response from the United States to show they're actually moving, then I think the worst case is a ballistic missile test. And I think it could also be, I still do think it's possible they might do a satellite test, although it is looking rather more towards a missile test now. With a satellite test, they could still send a satellite right up to geostationary orbit, which would be quite a striking thing to do, and show the world their capabilities without quite stepping over the line of starting on the missile testing again, and show what strong engines they have. So that's still a possibility, I think. But it is well possible that behind the scenes things are still going on, and I think it's really over to the US to move at this point. I mean, Kim Jong-un has played his hand. He's cancelled his junior speech, which is a big deal. He has said that he feels no longer bound by by his promise not to test ballistic missiles. And I don't think it's likely that he is going to move very quickly to testing a ballistic missile, because having done all that, not made his New Year's speech. Now, if he was going to test one, he'd have made his New Year's speech and said, I'm going to test this nuclear missile, this ballistic missile, or do this nuclear test or something. Or made some, it's obvious, by cancelling his New Year's speech, and he's saying, things are still fluid. I'm still here for you to talk. He hasn't put forward a position such as he would if he did this speech. And that is how I read it anyway. So, we'll just have to see what's happened. But don't worry, there's no chance at all of war. There never was a chance of World War III, because there's absolutely no way that Kim Jong-un can defeat the United States or even think about that. There's no way that Russia or China would come in behind North Korea. If North Korea was to set off a nuclear weapon in anger, or then the top priority of China would be to invade North Korea and abduct their nuclear weapons and take them away from them. China do not want North Korea to use its nuclear weapons, and their last resort would be to invade, and the nuclear weapons are closer to the Chinese than the South Korean border, and the Chinese would probably get there very quickly and would be able to at least do something to kind of stop this. Maybe not get them all, but I think that would be, there have been, and this is not my own ideas, this was someone talking about military strategy way back at the time of the Winter Olympics, and they said that China's top priority if there's a North Korean war they would not honour their agreement to support North Korea. They would instead have as their top priority to get hold of the nuclear weapons and prevent them being used, and then to establish a border as part of North Korea between China and North Korea, which would be kept free of the United States forces and leave the rest of North Korea over to the United States. That's just somewhat speculation, but you can see from that there's no way that North Korea wants to start a war. It would be the end of North Korea. It would then be taken over by the United States, and apart from a little strip that would belong to China, and there would be no separate North Korea anymore. That's a best guess as to what would happen in the Korean War, in which millions of people would die. There's no way that North Korea wants that. And there's no way that it's a world war, and there's no way that the United States wants to attack North Korea either, because it would be absolutely appalling in civilian casualties in South Korea, where there are 100,000 United States civilians and military combined together, and who knows how many tourists, many tourists every year. I've got the figures somewhere, I forget what the figure is. I think it's in the millions of US tourists to South Korea every year, and vast numbers from the rest of the world. South Korea and also North Korea, they're remarkably pretty and beautiful countries. North Korea still is, even after all the degradation. It's a beautiful country. They have tourist resorts there. They're trying to attract tourists because it is currently their only way of getting external revenue, because tourists are exempt from the sanctions. And they do actually have a beautiful countryside there, just as South Korea is. And they have a huge potential. I mean, they're extremely ingenious people, just like the South Koreans. And I mean, with help from South Korea, who do want to help them, who want to infuse vast amounts of money into helping them, then North Korea could transform, and from a least developed country to a developed country, right up to the level of South Korea, probably very quickly. And Kim Jong Un knows that, and he wants that. And Trump made that a big part of his plea to them during the summit, saying, this is what we can offer to you. Take this step. You've got one route this way or the other route that way, which could lead to a very productive future for North Korea. And he really sold it to them. He was a good salesman, and they are behind that. And it's not deceitful. It's correct that if they can do this denuclearization, if they can start the sanction relief, start proper denuclearization, and continue the process that's already happened, then the future could be very, very good for North Korea. Very good indeed. And this is without losing the regime and continuing with their society, or the government, I'll be more polite about it, their government, and continuing the society as they have it, and then developing slowly. And the thing that surprises many people, and don't really would find it hard to believe it if you haven't kind of looked into it and found out about it, is that both North Korea, nearly everyone in North Korea, and judged by doing interviews of North Koreans on business in China, which are not particularly to do with government or anything, then nearly everyone in North Korea expects eventual reunification with South Korea. Peaceful reunification. And they don't expect the current government to be the final government at the end of the reunification. Now, how long that would take is the question. But they do expect that eventually. That is their hope and wish, because they have kin, they have like their great cousins or whatever you call them in South Korea that was split by the Korean War, just the accident of history. And a large proportion, especially of the older people in South Korea, also have a similar wish, despite the very different governments and being a democracy, and then being, they're not communist, they're Confucian. They have some elements that come from the Communist Party, but they have rejected that. And they are very uncomfortable neighbours with China. They do not have actually a very good outlook. They don't think very highly of China. They think it's very important for North Korea to be independent as an independent country. They don't want to be part of China. They very much do not want to be part of China. They want to follow their own path. Maybe they would like being part of China or having strong. Sorry, I'm just speculating. Silly. Forget about that. So anyway, we're talking about very ancient history, but they've always been. They're very independent. They have their own history and past that is completely different from China, and their mythology and so on. And so, I think so. Let's hope that with this new year, then we can get some positive developments with North Korea, and then the South Koreans would certainly want to be involved in rebuilding North Korea. They would put in billions of dollars into it. They would actually get quite a lot back as well through the combination and of their firms helping to rejuvenate an entire country and bring it forward. And then there's all the know-how that North Koreans have. They are ahead of South Korea in their knowledge of satellite launching and space technology, and so they have a fair bit to offer to South Korea as well. And then as for the reunification eventually under one government, I mean, who knows, that surely would happen anytime soon, but certainly they can do an awful lot of cooperation and joint projects, and this whole thing about South Korea rejuvenating North Korea is going to be a huge, massive project, and that will just inevitably by itself bring the two countries together more and more, and then at the end of that maybe we can begin to see how this reunification can happen. And for any of you who don't know, then they often, like in the Winter Olympics, they march together, North and South Korea, and they fielded a joint team in, I think it was ice hockey, was it? And they march under a single flag, symbolising their wish to be a single Korea in the future. So anyway, hope that background helps you a bit, and I can give links to some of my articles that explain this. This is just for my I've been writing about North Korea so much because people get scared about it so much that now I have a lot of this just I know it's in the back of my I don't need to go and bring up the articles and read them, but I can add links to them in the description to this video. So I think that's long enough, and I'll upload this video, and let's hope that this new year brings a better future for North and South Korea, and this, if we do get denuclearization in North Korea, it would be quite a positive thing, because it would be a denuclearization of the entire Korean peninsula, not just North Korea. It's not likely that the US would actually that there would have to be a kind of limited agreement where, well, the people have worked out various ways as to how that could be done. That's just a wish for both North and South Korea to have a denuclearized entire peninsula, and the US would still have its nuclear weapons stationed at Guam, and they would still probably not disclose whether or not their planes and submarines have nuclear weapons on board. But there have been other nuclear-free regions around the world that have a similar kind of rules that can be copied, that would do that. In a way, it's sort of on paper, and you sort of think, well, I mean, is it, how much of a nuclear-free zone is it really if the United States have their nuclear bombers in Guam, which could fly over at any point? But it is symbolically, it would be very significant to have a nuclear-free Korea, which you could put on the map as a little blue zone of this another nuclear-free zone in the world. And that is a possibility. that we could see the actual process of complete denuclearization of North Korea is not something you can do overnight. The experts say that it would be about a minimum of 10 years to completely denuclearize, but within a few months then you can get taken it far enough so it is not possible for them to launch a nuclear weapon straight away or launch an ICBM straight away. And so that is something symbolic gestures you could do right away. And then start irreversible, not irrevocable denuclearization, in the sense that they could reverse it, but it gets harder and harder to reverse it the further you go down the line, with phased sanctions reductions as well at the same time. Then that is definitely very feasible. And within a few months to a year, then it would be very, very much reduced, their capabilities for returning back to a nuclear state. And then over a period of years, the experts who built the missiles and who built the nuclear weapons, then they would be needed and employed in the denuclearization process, which is not easy. It's highly technical and very difficult to do. It's not as simple as it sounds, especially dealing with all the power stations to create the plutonium and the nuclear waste and the plutonium and the nuclear weapons, and this requires highly skilled expertise to denuclearize, and they can do that slowly, and that would has the advantage it employs all the people with all the knowledge of nuclear weapons in North Korea. We have to be very careful about that, because we don't want them to suddenly be out of a job and then looking for a job somewhere else in the world, Iran or something. So they need to have a job. Otherwise it would be very tempting, however loyal they are to North Korea, that they're out of a job and they can get lots of money in Iran or somewhere with their expertise. And so these people need to be given employment in the transition. And then later on, the experts recommend that the North and South Korea could build a unified space organization, which would probably launch from South Korea, which has the better launch facilities closer to the equator, but with lots of experts from North Korea involved in it. And then also North Korea, as part of their climate change plan, is to transition to renewables, also to build nuclear power stations. So the experts on nuclear weapons can be involved in the process of building and running peaceful nuclear power stations in North Korea to help with climate change. And along with, of course, building all the renewable power stations that they want to build. They have a much stronger commitment for the Paris Agreement in a conditional wish list, if they had the money to pay for it, than South Korea has. They are basically, what they want to do is basically 1.5 degrees C compatible, if they had the finance for it. Whereas South Korea have a rather weaker pledge for the climate agreements. There's actually a lot of good in North Korea. I'm not saying that there's some individuals that are certainly major human rights issues, but there's also a lot of good in, and the ordinary people, if I'd been born in North Korea, I would be a North Korean, and I'd be loyal probably to Kim Jong Un if I was born there. And you've got to bear this in mind. The 28 million people that live there, and they don't know anything else. And if you'd been born there, you would be just like them. And you'd be probably quite loyal to your country. For instance, the fishermen that wash up in Japan, and these are fishermen who usually it's the ghost ships with the dead bodies. And what happens is that they fish way out of sea, because the best fishing area of North Korea belongs to South Korea, who have a few islands there, and then they claim the fishing area. And the North Koreans, they have a little area close to North Korea then they have problems getting enough fish there. They sail way out to sea, and then the storms take them sometimes. You're out into international waters, and then the storm takes their little boats out to Japan, and a lot of them die on that journey. And the very few of them have survived all the way to Japan, and they're not spies, and their immediate wish is they want to be returned to North Korea. They don't want to defect. These are just ordinary North Koreans who've been out fishing, and they got caught up in storm, and they find themselves in Japan, and their immediate wish is to go back to their families in North Korea. I mean, who wouldn't in that situation? They don't want to leave them behind and try and set up a new life in Japan where they don't speak the language, they don't understand the culture. You know, they want to go back to their homeland. And so North Korea is full of ordinary folk like that, and not just the leaders. And that is why I think we should consider that the United States, nothing I can do about it, but I think the United States should consider doing humanitarian-based sanction relief to get things started, and really consider seriously. And by the way, also North Koreans, they're very keen on conservation and on preserving species as well, despite all their problems there. Then there are many North Koreans who care a lot about the conservation of species and biodiversity and things like that. Again, I mean, if you were brought up in North Korea, you'd just be like, you of course you care about your country. So anyway, the ordinary folk, they're just like they are everywhere else in the world. And Kim Jong Un has really brought them forward to a new place. They used to be just absolutely totally hating the US with propaganda, sort of slandering, and you're saying awful things about the president and cartoons and things. And he has moved them psychologically into a place where they start seeing the United States in a much more positive light. And that is Trump's doing again. And I heard the many things about Trump's policies that I do not like and I'm very much against. But in this particular case of North Korea, then I think he has done something rather special, maybe by accident. And I think he should move forward and do more of this. And I think a bit of sanction relief would make a huge difference at this stage. Anyway, we'll see what happens, and I hope things turn out for well. But there's no way is North Korea going to start a war, and I hope that what I just said just now helps you understand that a bit better. And Happy New Year for everyone. Why not just a shout out to, thanks for everyone who helps to make Doomsday Debunk work so well, and the moderators and all the debunkers and the various people who help in so many ways there. So Happy New Year to everyone, and thanks for everything that you do to help the scared people, and for the scared people, so much you're doing to help each other and sympathising with each other. And it's actually been rather wonderful with the groups of things that happen. I mean, you hardly wonder how it can work. We have, for instance, we have the people who are scared of Trump. We have the people who are very strongly in favour of Trump's policies, very strongly against. We have the people who believe in the rapture. We have the people who think it's nonsense, who don't think Christianity even makes sense. Then we have people who are scared of the rapture. And then we have, you go to anything, almost any of these topics. There's people who are very strongly in favour of Brexit, very against it, and people who are scared of Brexit. And somehow or another, we have the people who are very strongly, who even think that IPCC underplays things, and like the climate is much worse than they say it. The people who think there isn't the climate issues at all, and then we have people who are scared. So amongst nearly all the things we have people who are scared of, we have these very polarised divisions in society as well. especially in the United States for climate change. I know that most of the world is not so much of a discussion, but in the United States it's very polarised. And yet we've managed to make it work as a community somehow. Just through mutual respect, and through our common aim to help the people who are scared, and focusing on the scared people, and doing what we can to help them. And so, thanks for everyone who has helped to make that possible, and the way the group has worked, and the moderators, two moderators, Giovanni Costa and Nathan Smith, and all the debunkers who put so much into helping the group work and function. And Happy New Year to everyone.